Hello everyone and welcome to the Music Professor channel. My name's Matthew King and Loki's here with me. He's slightly tucked under the piano stool, but I think you can see his head. Have a listen to this little piece. I'm going to play just an extract from something on the piano, and no doubt the title of this video may be a little bit of a giveaway. But imagine you don't know what this video is about and you're just confronted with this music. Is there anything about this music that tells you who it's by or what era it belongs to? Now, admittedly, it's not originally a piano piece, and I'm having to use pedal and things to make it sound nice on the piano. But if you had to imagine who composed it, well, it could be J.S. Bach, because it clearly looks back to Bach in terms of its contrapuntal technique, and it's absolutely masterful. You can hear all these wonderful ingenuities of counterpoint. It's a chorale prelude. In fact, there's a hymn tune embedded in it, a Lutheran hymn, so it might make you think of Bach. But although it sounds like Bach, there's a sort of a slightly later era that seems to be there, a hint of classicism that perhaps wouldn't be in a Bach chorale prelude. But it also seems to point forward to Romanticism. There's a hint of Schumann maybe, or Mendelssohn, who of course was influenced by Bach. Maybe even a hint of Wagner in some of that chromatic harmony. Or possibly it makes you think of late Beethoven, a composer who clearly has been influenced by this music in terms of the use of Baroque genres or contrapuntal genres, but in a new, rather arcane way. So anyway, it is in fact Mozart. It's the Mozart of the Magic Flute. I've featured the Magic Flute in several shorts recently on the channel. And this is the marvellous, marvellous and weird duet of armed men in the second act of the Magic Flute, who stand and sing this Lutheran hymn melody. Not many people realise when they go to see the Magic Flute that they're singing this Masonic text to a Lutheran hymn. And the extraordinary, wonderful, I mean, anyone who doubts Mozart's genius, all that wonderful intricacy, I think the only other composer who could do it as brilliantly and with such facility as this is J.S. Bach. Maybe Handel, maybe late Beethoven, but it definitely has that kind of rich, profound kind of contrapuntal depth. Anyway, all this is by way of an introduction to an older video on the channel, a kind of speculative discussion about one of the great what-ifs, or possibly the great what-if of musical history, which is what would have happened to Mozart if he'd not died at the age of 35, if he'd carried on and lived beyond 1791. I mean, if he'd lived to a normal old age, in the modern sense, you know, if he lived to 80, he could have got to the 1830s and been writing music at the same time as Schumann and Mendelssohn and even the young Richard Wagner, you know. But he didn't get there. He died in the 1790s, ludicrously early. So here are some thoughts on that subject. Let me know what you think. In one of the shorts recently, I speculated about Mozart. My feeling about Mozart, if you want to know what my thoughts are, again, I'll say what they are. I think he'd have gone to Britain, just like his friend Haydn had done. They'd had this meal before Haydn set off. I think it was 1790. Haydn and Mozart had a meal together, a sort of farewell dinner. And Mozart was very sad because his friend Haydn was going off and he didn't think they'd see each other again, and he was right. But it was because Mozart, died, not because Haydn was too old, which is what he thought was going to be the problem. Haydn came back, you know, a rich man, having been the toast of London, and he went back again
for a second trip later in the 1790s. Now, if Mozart had survived, my hunch is there were talks going on with Salomon, and Haydn was wanting to get Salomon to bring Mozart over, so I think that would have happened. And I think that Mozart's friendship with the Irish tenor Michael Kelly would have put him in contact with Sheridan, the great Irish playwright who was big in London at that time and working with Michael Kelly. And if Mozart had joined that little theatrical enterprise, fresh from the triumph of the Magic Flute. Remember that the Magic Flute was the big breakout success of Mozart's career and would have made Mozart rich anyway on the back of the 100 or more performances in Vienna in 1791, and then it toured and became a huge international success. So he was already made, in effect. If he'd gone to London, he might have teamed up with Sheridan and they might have written amazing English, I don't know, almost like musicals, English Singspiels. Imagine that. English Singspiels with these amazing post-Magic Flute scores by Mozart. Can you imagine such a thing? Mozart's style had become this wonderful refined combination in the Magic Flute of a sort of folk-like idiom, a sort of very self-conscious simplicity in these sort of beautiful Masonic C major things that he does. I'll give you an example. So look, here's an example in the Magic Flute, this extraordinary melody, sort of Masonic melody, during the Tamina has to undergo some trials, and you have this flute accompanied by brass and timbs. It's such a strange mix. And 3, 4, and the chords are all 1 and 5. 3, 4, there's the timp at the bottom. Flute and brass, it's such a fascinating kind of ceremonial mix. 2, just 1 and 5. Now look at this. 2, 3. Suddenly the tonic seventh becomes this miracle chord. What's this? Subdominant seems exotic. And then the orchestra comes in, and there's something fascinating about the simplicity of it. It's absolutely simple and yet marvellously strange and exotic. I think that's remarkable. I can't think of any other composer who could do such a thing. And when you hear it orchestrated the way he does, it's even more fabulous. What would Mozart have written later? So we can't speculate too much about this, but I'm imagining success in England with musicals. Mozart hitting the West End, writing these amazing pieces with Sheridan. And that's something that I've thought for some time, that's a very likely outcome for him. And then I think at some point he would have returned to Vienna. He wasn't going to ever be able to return to Salzburg, where he was in effect in exile from Salzburg. While the Prince Archbishop was there, there was no two-way traffic. And his father had died, so Salzburg was no-go, but he very likely would have returned to Vienna to retire. And I could imagine him producing amazing chamber works in his old age. Maybe a few more symphonies too. Hard to imagine what they would have been, but I can't think of him embracing early Romanticism. You know, Weber, who was a sort of distant relative of his, or cousin of his wife, Constanze, had sort of captured the German Romantic thing in the 1820s with Der Freischütz. What would Mozart have thought of that? It's hard to know. Rather like Beethoven, I can't see Mozart fully embracing Romanticism, though he himself, I'd be very keen to point this out, is a sort of proto-romantic composer. Think of this sort of wonderful thing. These amazing slow movements from the piano concertos. So many things in Mozart hint at a kind of romanticism, don't they? I think it was E.T.A. Hoffmann who said that Mozart was a romantic composer. All I'm speculating is some sort of retirement, a rich Mozart, possibly producing, in his late years, producing some mainly chamber music since he was so good at doing that. Perhaps retiring from theatrical projects. It'd be nice to imagine, didn't happen.